a special edition of the show brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, your college football tailgate destination and official sports good and outdoor retailer of the SEC. Stop by your local Academy store or academy.com and gear up for game day today. I'm David Nuno. Billy Lucci's here early in the morning, and head coach Mike Elko is in the house. Coach Elko, hello.
How we doing?
We're
it's
all
nice
right.
to be over here in the TexAgs studio, to get the invite to come over first thing in the morning. I appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you for coming in, man.
Yeah, so let me cut that off right now and make sure I do this, right, to my wife back in Durham. Happy Valentine's Day, hon. Appreciate you.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. I guess I wrote it down 79 days ago. You take the job, right? So you knew it was going to be a lot of work, but did you know, like, the kind of grind? Obviously, college football's evolved over the last few years, but coming into this job, those 79 days of what it was going to look like.
Yeah, I don't know. You obviously, listen, you take over a new job and you know there's a lot to do, right? And you're building the infrastructure for a huge foundation in your program and all of that stuff you're aware of. I've said this to people, though, like, I don't know that you can even begin to understand when, with the portal, with roster retention, with what is truly going on today in college football, what that initial 30 days looks like. I don't think you could prepare for that at all.
So when you took the Duke job was just 2 years prior.
Yeah.
How much has that process changed just in two years in college football?
Yeah, I think the timing of it was so much different, and I think college football has evolved so much. So when I got hired at Duke, it was like 3 days before the dead period started in December. And so it was literally like, I think I flew in on a Friday, I had Saturday and Sunday, and then it went dead. Mm-hmm. And so you got to spend a solid 3 weeks in the office doing what you had to do, plus the portal hadn't really opened up. The portal didn't really become a huge thing until after spring ball that year. And so, you didn't have the travel. When I got here, it was right at the beginning of the recruiting period. Yeah. And so, not only were you trying to go out and see the 23 prospects, the 24 prospects, the 25 prospects, you're trying to see the kids in the portal, you're trying to see your own kids. Like it literally was everything coming together all at once.
Did the fact that you had been here and knew some of, I don't know how, I guess a lot. I'm trying to think of how many of the guys, what percentage of the roster you knew, but because you had some familiarity, did that help at all in roster retention, or was that the hardest part of this whole process?
Yeah, I think it helped to some degree. There were a handful of guys that had played for me, right, and knew who I was. Probably the vast majority I knew through recruiting only, right, and I had left before they got on the roster. Yeah. I think the fact that there was a little bit of familiarity with who I was, there were at least people they could talk to reference who I was, probably helped with a little bit of building trust in some of those initial relationships with the guys we were able to retain. You look at a Connor Weekman, I not to say that our relationship was great, but certainly had a familiarity with him. His family was around at recruiting dinners with him. And so when you start talking to a guy like that about where we're going, it's probably easier to get the conversation started.
It just seems like when you look around the country, that's the most daunting task of a new coach. And that's like that danger zone when a new coach comes in is retaining, you guys did a great job in terms of keeping as much of the roster as you did.
No, yeah, it's a huge danger zone because everything is relationship based nowadays, right? And especially coming from, when you come from a school in a different area of the country who maybe has a different recruiting footprint and you don't cross paths with a lot of these kids and you just walk in and it's literally the first time you're like, that was us with the class we just signed, right? Yeah. Being at Duke the last 2 years, like I had never had a conversation with Tristan Jernigan ever, right? Yeah. And so you walk in here in December and he's looking at you like, and that without having any prior relationship at all, those things are always challenges.
At what point did the A&M job seem like a place you could eventually end up? Was it maybe as a coordinator here, like, man, I sure would love to be the coach here one day? Was it maybe when the struggles were happening? Or you were so focused on the Duke experience? Yeah,
not at all with the struggles, but obviously when you're here for 4 years, it's not hard to figure out how special a place this is. And so, my family and I really enjoyed it here. I think you guys know we turned down a lot of different things to stay here as the defensive coordinator. We were very happy here until the right time and the right situation came along for us. And That was Duke, and still very thankful and appreciative for them giving me that opportunity. But this place is special. We as a family believe that. I think everyone in this community believes that. And so certainly when you get here and you see it and go all the way back to my first year hosting game day, walking out on that field against Clemson, this is different. This place is completely different than a lot of places across the country.
Describe, a lot of us watch really closely what you were doing at Duke, both out of, interest, but also just we liked you when you were here, and
Thanks, Billy.
You're welcome. But in case you were wondering, describe a Mike Elko coach football team. When you trot that field out there, or the team out there on the field this year and beyond, what's a Mike Elko team going to stand for?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is an appreciation for the opportunity we have to represent Texas A&M, right? I think that's where, to me, there's a huge starting point, which is just to say, we're in the 1% of the country at who we are, right? I say that to our kids all the time. If you look around at 19-year-olds across America, you're living in the elite world, right? And so, what we do is hard. What we do is challenging. There's a lot of stress that comes along with being a high-level football player. But let's not forget, what we're really doing. And I think that's the starting point, right? And then it's, we want to be extremely tough mentally, physically. We want to be able to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. We want to be very disciplined. We want to be very prepared. And we want to walk off every field saying that's the team that played the hardest, right? And if you can put those things together with some talent, with some skill, with some really good scheme concepts, you can be a really good football team.
How hard is it to not fall in love with just the talent, the stars behind a name? Not that you guys look at that, but just the talent itself, as opposed to the fit with the right amount of talent.
Yeah, I think this is, I appreciate you asking me this, because Billy and I have talked about this a little bit off the air. What you have to do in recruiting is you have to identify future NFL talent, right? And no matter how talented a kid in his high school, he's still not getting drafted right out of high school, right? And so there's still something that has to happen, right? And for some kids, there's a little bit more. For some kids, there's a little bit less. But when you're talking, there are a lot of intangibles that go into becoming an NFL draft pick, right? And if you want to evaluate how we do in recruiting, I want you to evaluate it through the draft, right? I know that's so hard in today's society, right? Because everyone wants to know right now, today, how we did in 2024 recruiting. But the reality is you really won't know. You won't know until 2 years, 3 years down the line when, are these kids all SEC players? Are these kids getting drafted? Are these kids becoming, because that's what the roster has to look like for us to win it all, right? And if we're going to win it all like we're capable of, we've got to have a roster out there that's got 17, 18 NFL players on it, right? That's what history has shown us. And that, to me, is what you're looking for.
When you mentioned beating teams also with scheme. What was more difficult for you, hire an OC or a DC? And the reason I ask that is because the OC search, I know, I want to ask you about Colin Klein here in a second, but what was harder? Because I know with the defensive coordinator search, I know with you being a defensive coach, just how much probably, I can just picture you and the amount of thought you put into it, because you told me a while back, I want them to coach the defense on Saturdays. I'm the head coach. So was that the harder one for you, even though you were the defensive guy?
Yeah, so obviously I think the offensive coordinator position is probably the more important one from a hire standpoint, because from a schematic standpoint, obviously he's going to have to carry 85-90% of the load to my 10 to 15%. But the harder one for sure is the defensive coordinator, because I think, what I need is someone who's extremely intelligent, who's an extremely hard worker, who has a really good understanding of the game of football, but also can kind of see it through the same lens as me, right? And that's probably the biggest challenge. Is I don't know how well I would have partnered with somebody who looked at defense completely different than I did, right? Because I don't know that I'm at a point yet where I can completely just stand there and go, okay, I never would have done it this way. I understand it can be successful, so you can, and I'm good. I don't know that I'm there yet. Yeah. And so I think it probably was hard just trying to find that partner. And I think we were very lucky in finding Jay Bateman, and I think that'll be great.
So you go all the way back that many years, and you just remember what it was like working with Jay Bateman and what he was about as a coach, or did you learn a lot more during the hiring process?
Oh, I think, well, not even the hiring process. I think the when you point out the relationship, I think the relationship has continued for 20 years.
Okay.
You know, not that I don't know that anybody can be best friends in coaching, right? Like you don't have the ability, the time, or anything like that. But you know, when you work with somebody and you respect the person you work with, and you stay in connection with them for a long period of time, you follow them, you watch them in the off season, you know how they're, you know, and so that to me created a lot of familiarity with Jay philosophically. I know who he is as a person. I know we've had a lot of football conversations over the years. I think that's what makes it easier.
And you talked about how blown away you were by Coach Klein upon y'all's first face-to-face meeting and stuff. Since then, since you've been working with him now for, I guess, almost a couple months, what's that been like? What are your impressions on him?
Yeah, I just think he's extremely intelligent. I think he's a phenomenal human. I think, and when you put those two things together, like a lot of success happens. I think he'll be able to really connect with our kids. I think he already has. I think they can look at him as a leader that they can follow. And then I think he'll do a really good job of creating a structure and scheme that can kind of accentuate their strengths, right? And that's what kids are looking for. They want to know that when they go on the field, you know, the coach is putting in a lot of time and effort to put them into the absolute best position they can.
When you're going around the state and you're talking to recruits, you're talking to coaches and high school programs, how is A&M being received? Not necessarily since you got there, but just overall how this as a program is looked upon.
Yeah, I think everybody sees it the same way we do, right? Which is you know, there's a lot of excitement about what we can be and what everybody believes we're capable of, and you know, maybe a little bit of angst about why we're not there, right? And all you're trying to do is get in front of these young men and say, like, okay, hey, here's what it is, right? And everybody that we bring here, you know, the jaw hits their floor because this place is amazing, right? And then it's just trying to fill in the gap of, okay, here's why we're going to become a consistent winner. Here's why we're going to be a team that's consistently in the playoff. And here's maybe some of the things that we're going to do to help you become the best player you can become and the best team that we can become. I think that's maybe where everybody sees it. I think we're all in the same, if you look at it realistically, I think we're all in the same spot. You see what it should be, and now how do we get it there?
When you guys got here and you're attacking the portal, I felt like it was just, you know, a mile a minute.
I was just trying to keep you busy.
Exactly. Well, you did. Thank you. You took a month out of my off season, but it was for a good cause, I suppose. Kept Bronny super busy, which I really like. Kept him out of the gym. But you putting that group together, and it's 20 plus guys. When you guys sat back as a staff afterwards, how pleased were you? And do you feel like there were any holes that you may need to go back and address in the spring?
Yeah, I think so. When we looked at it that week, so that, you know, we were able to get the couple kids early, and then, you know, we got the staff together, and that window was going to open back up in the early part of January when kids were going to be able to come on campus. And when we looked at, you know, what that portal recruiting board looked like and what we needed and what we were trying to add, there was not a lot of margin for error, right? And that week, we were going to have to hit at a really, really high rate to get where we wanted to go. And so I think when you look at that, when you just look at, okay, you know, we got to go 7 for 8 with these DBs that we're bringing in, like not 7 for 14, but like 7 for 8 to get this where we want it to be. I think we were able to have an awful lot of success in what we were able to put together, given the restrictions and the timing and all of those things. You know, and then are there holes? Like, I don't, and I said this in that opening press conference when someone asked me this, like, I don't evaluate it as holes. I just think you are constantly in the market to see where you can improve, right? And I don't think that you ever want a program that shies away from competition, right? And so you're going to make sure that, you know, you're going to find and look and continue to search for whatever you think makes this roster better moving into the fall. And maybe there will be, maybe there won't be. I don't know. The spring portal window is always so weird with who goes in and what's available and what you can get done. But if there's stuff out there for us, we want to be involved in it.
Is there a wildest story during the portal season? Like, is there a guy here that you're like, I don't even know how he ended up here, or one that came together so quickly Like, or completely off the radar guy? Is there one that stands out?
Let me think. Like, who would be the wildest? I mean, honestly, probably Des Ricks.
Really?
I think just at the end of it, maybe more so because that one you felt like it was over, right? Like it was like, okay, all right, we made it through this. We're in a good spot. We kind of got through it. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, this might be going on, and like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And then like 24 hours later, he's here, and he's like here, like going to classes here.
True.
And
did he really come with his
it was like
back?
quick, like really quick, and it's like, okay, and so just probably that one from being like nowhere on the radar to over like that. I think just speaks to the speed of what this thing is moving like sometimes.
Coach Elko, we hear about resources in A&M having all these resources, and I think we think of the big things, stadium, the workout facility. But what does that mean? Like when you walk into there and you see we have all these resources, kind of explain to us what that means to you.
Yeah, honestly, what it means is we have potential that we have to live up to. I think that's what it means to me. It's there's nothing, I can't point to anything and say, this is why we're failing. We're not failing because we don't have fan support. We're not failing because we don't have enough to provide our student athletes the absolute premium experience. We're not failing because we don't have the strength and conditioning program that we need, right? Like we have everything we need to build this program exactly how we want to build it, right? Which is everything you want as a coach, because that just means it's on us, right? We just have to do it the right way. We've got to convince people that our quick present future is better than maybe the recent past in terms of playoff and success and where we want to end up and finish. But I think people can easily look around and say, yeah, I can see this vision. I can see where this is going.
A really important thing going on right now, besides what y'all are doing in the offseason, obviously, is the athletic director search. I know you're not on a search committee. You're not going out. You're not the type of head coach that's going out hand-picking, but obviously very interested, probably more so than anyone. I guess the best thing I could ask you right now is, what would you hope will be some of the characteristics? What would you hope they're looking for in an AD?
Yeah, and I've been fortunate enough and have had some conversations with Mark Welsh, and he obviously respects my opinion on what we need or what from a football perspective at the very least we're looking for. And I just think you're looking for a guy that can come in here and understand this modern era of college athletics and where it's going. I think a lot like football has evolved, I think so too has every sport within the athletic department evolved, right? And the role that NIL plays in everything, the role that running an extremely efficient athletic department plays, especially as we move into whatever this next era of college football is going to look like, which we all have an idea that in the next 5 years it's going to look a lot different somehow, some way. And just a guy who understands where this thing is headed and has a great vision and direction for where he wants Texas A&M athletics to go.
I want to ask you a non-football question to start us off.
Wow, okay.
Was there a place you had to go go eat, to go be a part of when you moved back? Like, I missed this place. Was there a place?
Yeah, you're going to get me in a lot of trouble in this town as I go through this. Yeah, you got to pick one, right? So we had a lot of favorites when we were here. Yeah. I think you got to give a shout out to 1860 because we certainly spent a lot of time down there. And then to be honest with you, we just like the normal stuff. And so the first time my wife and I went out, we went to walk-ons.
All right.
Just went to walk-ons and sat in the back, and it's kind of where we belong.
I did ask you, did I not? One day I said, do you go eating? Because it was in the middle of all the portal and the roster retention, hiring coaches. And he said, yeah, like, of course. And I said, all right, I didn't know if you were one of these head coaches that just never puts himself in a public restaurant for 4, 5, 6 years, because I've seen that happen more than once.
The nice thing is I can just keep a low profile. I just kind of mind my own business. No, we did. We always, when we were here, we just have always kind of integrated into the community and certainly don't want to do anything different. And the one thing I did always appreciate here was your people kind of leave you alone. They every once in a while you get someone come over, but for the most part, people just kind of leave you alone and let you do your thing. And I always respected College Station for that.
Almost another, I guess, non-football one is how nice was it to be able to go home and see the family, and how's that whole dynamic going with, that's common in coaching, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it was great to get to go home. I think for the whole staff, it just was basically, hit the ground running, and I don't think we even looked up until Wednesday, and it was nice for everybody to get out. I think a couple of the guys have now relocated their families here, which is good. We're still kind of in the midst of figuring everything out. I think most people know I've got an 11th grade son that's probably going to finish high school there, and so we're trying to situate that whole deal, and my 9th grade daughter. But it's great to get back for a weekend, and then saw Michael during recruiting, my son up at Richmond, happened to fly over Richmond, and so got the plane to swing in for dinner one night, which was good.
Nice.
So
even 2 years out too, though, I guess it is a little different because they probably both, the high school kids, have a ton of friends here too still, which is not normal. No
doubt. And it's funny, people don't think about this, but we spent more time here than we did in Durham. And so my daughter, did 3rd grade to 7th grade here. And so, a lot of her friend group that she met while she was here is still obviously here. And so, I think they're all the same, right? It's they've got the group that they've integrated into, they've got this group back here, and, to try to be in both places if they could would probably be ideal.
Well, I guess before we go back full football, I do have to ask. One thing that you've done that the fans have really embraced, and this was another thing that we talked about when you were at Duke, is the social media. Knowing you when you were at DC here, and I guess because we didn't get you in front of the mic, but I didn't know you'd have. What's the Shaq meme? I wasn't familiar with your game. When you get on social media, I mean, you've really engaged the A&M fans via social. Talk about how much fun it seems like you're enjoying that, especially when you start getting a commit 2, 3, 4 days in a row.
Yeah, I think, first of all, probably need to let everyone know that actually is me. I'm not one of these coaches who hands his phone off.
Right.
I don't claim to have immense swagger on Twitter, but I have enough for a 47-year-old coach. And then I do get some help. So my kids and my oldest one probably in particular help design some of the ideas and thought processes that we put out there, because they're obviously on it a lot more than I am, and so that it becomes this family deal. And so we actually, as we went through, okay, what is our commitment GIF going to look like? How are we going to put this thing together? We actually the family came up with some designs, put them in a group chat, and kind of selected the right one, and obviously appreciate the fan base knowing it. But I think in this day and age, so many people are on social media, right? And it's now no longer just a young people thing. It's literally an American thing for the most part. And so to have some type of interaction, engagement as much as you can, certainly without putting our commits and recruits at risk, because you still want them to have their moment and their opportunities as well. But you like to have a little bit of fun with the fans when you can.
Stoke the fire when momentum.
Every once in a while, right? Once in a while. Speaking
of the engagement, it's become such a part with NIL, with donors, and that I feel I'm sure that's going to be a significant part of your off season, is making those relationships and meeting those people. What's your NIL message to fans today? We live in such a different world. It's become such an important part of this whole thing.
Yeah, I think the message is it's here, and it's here to stay, and we can talk about what our own opinions are on it, and none of that really matters, because this is the world we're living in now. I think that's probably the starting point. I think the second part is to understand that a lot of what NIL goes towards for these young men is not these extravagant purchases, right? A lot of our kids are taking NIL and giving it back to families, giving it back to their homes, helping support people back at home, and do some of those things. And so to understand that as well. And then I think it's just understanding what value looks like. And that's what we talk to our kids about. That's what we talk to our program about. there's a level of value that kids have earned in this day and age through NIL, and we have to provide that to them. That doesn't mean we have to get into massive bidding wars. It doesn't mean we have to do the above and beyond best, but you want people no different than you want coaches in your building to feel like you value who they are and the role they're playing in your business, right? And for us, that's our football team. And so I just think that's, to me, what NIL does. And if you can stay out in front and people in your program feel like they're being treated the right way, a lot of times it won't be about the most. It'll just be about doing it right.
Have there been certain players that have become maybe a mouthpiece, a leader that that have kind of gravitated to your message and certainly held players accountable? Like, I've seen the maturation of Bryce Anderson. Torian York, you were very familiar with, obviously. Is anybody really stepping up that side?
It's funny. I was joking with him yesterday about this, and we were talking about this a little bit as a staff. I think we've got a lot of really good kids, and certainly a lot of kids that are listening to the message and moving forward in the direction we want them to move in. I think to some degree, some of them are just trying to keep their own head above water right now. That I don't know that they're pulling other people along. But we got into really our first workout yesterday where the coaches were out there, and we were able to go out there and start to figure out how to push kids to their limits and kind of create new limits for them. And it was good to see some of our kids dive in with teammates and help encourage, push, and drive kids to places maybe they don't think they can go. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to watch some of that.
How interesting. I used to talk to Dan about that a lot, just the ability of a head coach to understand the motivational buttons to push with. In the NFL, it's less, but 85 different players, because that is, it's important, because as soon as a guy, especially today, as soon as a guy feels lost in the shuffle, or as soon as you or a position coach or coordinator can't connect to them, they're probably on their phone checking their DMs,
Yeah, I think obviously it starts with relationships, right? And then I think it goes to genuine, real connection and genuine, real honesty when you get in front of them. And I think I talk to people all the time about this, and this is the best way I can describe it. This is the why generation, right? And they will take accountability, they will take discipline, they will work hard as long as they understand why. Maybe we were the because generation, right? Like someone said it and you did it, and so we did it because we didn't know any better. This group has too much information, too much knowledge, too much ability to figure out if you're full of it, and so you've got to be able to get in front of them, and I think you've just got to be able to look them in the eye and say, like, hey, listen, like, what we're about to do is going to be hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but here's why, and here's how it's going to help you, and here's where it's going to develop you in a way that's going to help you get where you want to go, not only in football but in life. And let's give it a whirl and see what happens. And I think it's more that type of messaging nowadays. And it's funny you mentioned Dan, because you even saw it a little bit from him that way in the Hard Knock stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like there was, I just remember him. And I remember him talking about like tackling, and this is why. Like it's not because, right? This is why. Yeah. And once you hit that why, and and then people will get behind you and they'll follow you.
Yeah.
What does year one success look like for Coach Elko?
Oh, God, everyone always asks those questions. This is how I look at it, and this is honest to God, and this isn't coach speak. This is how we talk about it in our building. We want to become the absolute best version of this team that we can become, and I think everybody is aware that if we do that, there's going to be results that people will be happy about, right? And we're not lost on the fact that results matter, right? And our ability to create results matter. But I think if you put tangible goals out there, you're looking and focusing on things that are too far down the road, right? We want to wake up today and go attack today to be the best thing we can be. And if we do that enough consistently over time, then you lift your head up, and all of a sudden, right? When we got to Duke, and we had come off that team had come off of a 3-9 season, everyone wanted me to say, oh, hey, we're going to be a bowl team, or we're going to, right? And I just don't know that you can just push buttons and do that. Right? You roll up your sleeves and you work, and usually over the course of history that has proven to work, and that's what we're going to do.
Speaking of work, what's the next spring ball? not too far on the horizon. What's the next month or so look like? You mentioned you guys started the
So we're
call them team off season workout.
Yeah, so we're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The kids are lifting, and then Tuesday, Thursday, we do what we call competitive agilities, which kind of brings in some grit, some competition stuff, a little bit of football specific stuff, and kind of starts the process of us getting around the group and kind of starting to build the mentality that we want to look like and play with, and that'll lead right into spring break, and then they'll go into spring break, and then we'll come out of spring break and roll into spring ball and get this thing rolling and play a little bit of football.
It's your favorite time of year, right? Like the actual coaching, the teaching part of it?
Yeah, and not that, listen, you have to embrace every piece of this job, right? But at the end of the day, we promised all of these kids something, right? And this is the time where we have to deliver on that, right? And that's to help them grow, to help them become men, to help them become great football players. And you can't do that unless you're actually in it with them, working with them, being around them. And so, I think when you get those opportunities to be around your group, your team, those are what you relish.
It came yesterday, I think. Chris Del Conte at Texas said he was going to work. I feel like I know your answer to this. But I'm just teeing it up here. He said they were going to work really hard to get that game moved from Saturday after Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving night. Do you have a preference?
Let's put a ball down. You put a ball down somewhere, and we'll be there, and we'll play.
There you go. That's
perfect answer.
I didn't know if Thanksgiving, if he just said, don't interfere with my Thanksgiving, or if,
You put a ball down, and I'll play anyone. You put a ball down against them, and we'll be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Coach Elko, thank you so much for coming in. We really do appreciate your time. It was a great 35 minutes or so, and hope to do it again.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
All right,
appreciate getting over here.
I
had your back, bro.
Dalton said you came in and were saying you'd never been invited. I said, Dalton, quit trying to schedule interviews. I've been talking to him about it for weeks.
Yeah,
we're letting the guy build it.
Well, I don't know. I came over. I took some pictures, and they were like, "Hey, you should come over." I said, "Hey, you should invite me."
It's true. There's been no DC ever in here.
Yeah,
you just had to become a head coach.
I know. I had to get to a certain level.
Yeah.
I'm happy I'm there now more than anything else.
Head coach in the SEC, though. It's pretty incredible.
No, it's a lot of fun.
It's awesome.
It's a lot of fun. Looking forward to this, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun this journey.
We are too. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, appreciate
Mike Elko, everyone.